Hi, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. We'll wait about a minute while some of you join us from the waiting room, and then we'll get started with today's session. Hi, if you just joined, we are accepting a few of you from the waiting room, and we'll get started momentarily. Welcome and thank you for joining. I'm Cheryl Gomez with the study group, and we're grateful to our panelists and each of you for joining us today. We're excited for this webinar series exploring an agenda for advancing multimodal AI and assessment system innovation. If this is your first time joining one of our sessions, the study group exists to advance the best of AI assessment and data, practice, technology, and policy. Lauren?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Catuli with the study group. As you settle in and may have seen in the chat already, please feel free to include your name and where you're tuning in from. We'd love to get a sense of who's in the room today. You can use this chat feature as we move through this hour together. Also, the question and answer feature will send your questions right to panelists. We'll be recording this session and we'll send it out after, along with the materials. If you have any questions as we move through our time together today, please feel free to reach out to me.
We're actively publishing case studies from a range of leaders in the field, including a few of today's panelists. You can find these resources on our website. Today's session is part of a four-webinar series. Recordings for prior sessions are available via our website and YouTube channel. And we invite you to sign up to receive our weekly roundup highlighting recent developments and initiatives at the intersection of AI assessment, data, research, and policy. We'll now hear from our colleagues about the relevance and significance of today's session.
Measuring what matters most requires advanced measurement in AI, design, science, access, and technology.
This transformation begins by embracing learner variation. Person-specific formative assessment honors each student, yielding more accurate measures of progress and actionable feedback.
To deepen these insights, we must leverage multimodal AI-powered approaches. Combining modalities such as speaking, listening, writing, drawing, and clickstream data forms a richer picture of how learners think and understand.
These technologies are opening doors to valuing new forms of evidence of learning and new scoring models that capture evidence across many dimensions simultaneously.
And that's why we're moving toward competency-based learning. This is where progress is shown through projects and performances and portfolios and even games.
We have the opportunity to develop better tools for learning and instruction and support students in the precise ways they are struggling.
Now, one powerful approach to this is called stealth assessment. This involves building assessment deeply into the fabric of the learning environment itself, like in a game, so we can actually see what students know and can do without disrupting their flow.
But technology alone is not enough. We must commit to participatory, evidence-centered design.
When educators, students, families, and technologists come to the table together, co-designing, we can build without barriers and ensure tools reflect real-world needs and core human values.
When we innovate how we measure,
We transform assessment
From a routine interruption
into an engine for student growth.
We'll We'll now move to today's panel discussion. Our moderator, Eric Tucker, will get us kicked off.
Thank you, Cheryl. As president and CEO of the study group, I'm grateful for the panelists joining for this conversation. We have an amazing team that I'm honored to learn from and work with. Thank you, everyone, for joining, both live and pre-registrations joining asynchronously. Kristen, Andreas, Alina, Nancy, we're delighted to share this time and to learn from and with you. Thank you for your diligent and flexible preparation for today. As you know, we'll each have 4 and not more than 5 minutes of framing remarks, and then do 2 rounds of follow-up questions. Please introduce yourself as a part of your framing remarks. The prompt for the framing remarks: please share a profound shift in our ability to capture the nuance of human competence coming from multimodal AI. After your framing remarks, we'll spend the remainder of the hour in a high velocity, high value conversation amongst and between this all-star group leading measurement innovation. And time permitting, the session will wrap with a lightning round of closing remarks from each of you. Without further ado, Andreas.
Thank you, Eric, and we can go straight in. I'm currently at RTI International Research Triangle Institute. It's a global research organization, mostly doing agency government research with headquarters in North Carolina, and I lead a team of about 200 smart people in AI, data, and product engineering there. So let's go right into it. And first of all, thank you for having us. I think we're all very delighted to be here. And my starting remarks are really about kind of the evolution that I see in testing and measurement, and where we currently are and where we're going, and how AI and multimodal AI is helping us there. So I think our starting point is sort of this idea of generalized testing, fairly abstract constructs, a very high inferential distance from some construct, definitions, items, multiple choice items, other items, to all kinds of score gymnastics, mental gymnastics to get to some kind of comparison. And I think over the decades, we have certainly at various points tried to evolve into this idea of digital performance assessment, whether it's through games or simulations or tasks, and we're still doing a lot of that. And the idea is basically to hopefully be more informative to the learning process, being more informative to the teaching. And a lot of the things that have made that more affordable over the last few years, especially with AI, is the ability to generate more content at scale, to be able to generate synthetic populations in order to be able to pre-test things and figure out how things actually work. And of course, we have a long history in evaluating work products through machine learning models and things like that. I think where we are now and where I hope that we're getting to is to move to a more real-world evidence world. And so that is about, and I heard in the intro people saying like, oh, we have clickstream data. To me, clickstream data or telemetry or process data or however you want to call it, it's not for me the context, it is the data, right? It is actually what we should be focusing on, entirely away from these very high levels of inference without maybe as much evidence as we would like, to pretty clear-cut stuff. And so AI is really helpful in ingesting data, in doing, preserving privacy with privacy-preserving algorithms, as well as abilities to interrogate results, which then brings, I think, a lot of the great data we have to researchers much more easily. And so I have kind of these three things on the next slide as a framing way of things that I think we should be focusing on in reducing that inferential distance. I think, first of all, we can learn a lot from epidemiologists and geneticists and informaticians about the utilization of data. I think educational measurement is fairly uh, immature, if I may say so, in terms of using data sources from a wide range of places, being able to harmonize data, being able to validate data. And so I think we need to learn from these fields that are way further along and also arguably better funded. The amount of untapped educational data, I think, is enormous and growing. I'm fairly bullish on that, even despite all the privacy kind of laws that have been passed in the past few years. And it's simply because of this growing arsenal of sensors. And so we need to utilize that. And then we need to leverage AI to actually do the heavy lifting of data harmonization and processing and privacy preservation and analytics so that we can accelerate the research of actually understanding what learners need and what they can do, as opposed to mostly benefiting people who make tests like I used to do for quite a while. And so that is my frame for this afternoon. And with that, let's go to Kristen.
Thank you so much, Andreas. I love your vision. My vision for education is complementary. Hi, my name is Kristen Huff. I work at Curriculum Associates. We work in the world of mostly elementary and middle school reading and math. We support instruction, curriculum, assessment, and professional learning in about a third of our nation's elementary and middle schools. And I'd like to start with my punchline, which is that AI may finally let us measure the kinds of learning we have always claimed to value, but we can only do this if we're actually more rather than less disciplined about assessment design, what constitutes evidence, and how we think about validity in this new context. And so for me, the profound shift is that for the first time, as Andreas was saying, that we may be able to capture evidence of learning without forcing students to step out of the learning environment to go be assessed and measured. Students do not learn by filling in multiple choice questions. They do not learn by interacting with a technology enhanced item or by short answers that are created mostly for convenience of scoring. They learn when they explain, when they inquire, when they collaborate, when they make mistakes and revise them, when they build things, when they present, when they argue, when they listen to peers, and they make sense of new ideas. But for a long time, we have assessed students through a much narrower set of performances. And we did this not because we didn't value the true authentic learning experience, but because they were the performances that we could measure, that we could scale, we could score, and we could defend. So AI changes a lot of these constraints. Voice recognition, other multimodal ways to capture data can help us capture evidence that used to be elusive to us. And so these things that used to be elusive, students thinking aloud, explaining, etc. This is where I believe the most powerful evidence of student learning lives. So there is the promise that AI can help move us towards assessment that is more authentic, continuous, and less intrusive or interruptive. So this rise of AI, if we're asking the question, how can AI help us do assessment the kind that we do today more efficiently or generate more items multiple choice items more quickly, we're asking the wrong question. The question of the day is, how can AI help us measure what we truly value? And I believe that this idea of complex evidence from complex real life situation is exactly the kind of challenge that Miss Levy designed evidence-centered design for. Next slide. And this is where principled assessment design becomes essential. And I use PAD as a way to think about, or the instantiation of ECD specifically to the K-12 learning context, where assessment needs to be deeply grounded in how students learn and progress along a trajectory in a given domain. And the central point is very simple. If we're going to make claims about what students know and can do, we need a defensible, research-based theory about how students learn and develop knowledge and skills in that particular domain. So if we're assessing early literacy, we ought to know how students learn to read. And AI in this context can play a powerful role in the evidence identification part of the assessment system. It can help process messy, multimodal work products, audio, discourse, drawings, annotations, videos, log files, the process data Andreas was referring to, and help us translate that into observable evidence. And that is related to what our current measurement paradigm allows for, but it needs to be expanded because pattern recognition is not measurement. Pattern recognition does not automatically produce evidence. So when we engage in PAD, it forces us to articulate our inferential chain of reasoning in terms of what claim are we intending to make about what the student knows and can do, what evidence supports that claim, how do I gather that evidence most efficiently. And we have to dig down and recommit to these principles, or we're going to we are at risk of allowing this flood of data to give us more noise than signal. The next slide, please. And so in my conception, of how we go about this, I think we have to double down on what I think is the heart of our validity argument and therefore our assessment design, which is performance level descriptions, which are, if you want to think about them as learning progressions, that's fine. They do differ a bit, but I don't think that AI and this beautiful, authentic, multimodal data set about student learning lets us off the hook to start our assessment design and item writing and scale construction and score reporting, even though that's going to change dramatically with AI. Or coherence with instruction, curriculum, and professional learning. We're not off the hook with any of that just because AI is around. I'm open to a lot of changes in how we think about measurement and what's possible. I'm open to new ways of a lot, but what I'm not open to is letting go of how we think about the validity of our claims about what students know and can do. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Next slide, please. So I am Nancy Otero. I'm a Senior Program Officer at the Gates Foundation. I'm part of the assessment initiative, and I'm focused on trying to figure out what type of public goods can foster the next generation of assessment using AI. Next slide, please. So I'm going to be talking about three particular grants that I have done that I think exemplified some of these major changes. And the framework that I'm using to pick these three grants is that What we're seeing at the Gates Foundation is that there are many more products, many more practitioners, either trying to capture more information, more measurements using AI, or scaling practices that they already know that were working and have been validated by the practice or researchers that have been validating these measurements through RCTs. And now they think that these measurements and these practices are ready to scale with AI. And even though these practices were pretty valuable before, like inquiry-based assessments or problem-solving skills, they were not able to scale because the technology was not ready for that. So we're starting to see that different people are measuring different things, but they're also, as Kristen says, they are starting to construct different rubrics, different learning progressions to try to amplify what was able not to measure by the technology, but by conceptually measure before, to what now the technology can aggregate in data. And the idea of all of this is that hopefully, eventually, we can have a continuous evidence of human capability. It's not just one stop on an assessment that gives us a frozen moment in time of that mastery, but we can start aggregating all this data to keep monitoring how people are developing through time. Next slide. And the way that I'm approaching this particular problem is to public goods and infrastructure. So what are the public goods that we can actually create and need to facilitate this next generation of assessments? So in some of the cases, one of the arguments that I'm going to make is that we need AI-ready data sets that we can annotate, that we can make public so people can use them to train their models, to create benchmarks, to create AI harness. We want to also have transparent measurements and frameworks like these learning progressions, these rubrics, these validation evidence. All of that should be transparent, because one of the concerns is that when we start aggregating data uh, through an algorithm, through an AI, it might not be as transparent as we wish for the learner or for the institution. So if there is a problem, if there is like we want to be able to ask and be able to have transparency of how those measurements are being created. And then we also want some human certain validation science. So all these psychometrics works that we need to create to have a new way to think about how we're measuring this new data also needs to happen. And on the bottom of that, we need to have some technical infrastructure so we can keep iterating in making these assessments, while at the same time we are trying to co-designing with the educators, involving the researchers, and have like feedback loops that connect all the AI different pieces on these assessments. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about ETS skills for the future, which is a project where ETS is creating different learning trajectories for collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. They are also starting to have a platform that can accept in-school and out-of-school artifacts and different projects um, for children to be able to defend and provide evidence of how they are developing communication, collaboration, and critical thinking. And out of this grant, we're also creating public goods besides the learning trajectories that can hopefully help other researchers, other products to keep developing such skills and measurements. Next slide, please. Another part and another way to do it is, instead of going from products, we can start scaling all the research that we know that has worked, but it was very hard to scale because of the technology. So in this case, we're partnering with a Stanford Idea Lab to try to scale a problem-solving methodology that they have that includes a scoring of these skills, but also includes a chatbot that they develop between an agent that they have, which is creating items, and these items are problems for STEM particular, and another agent that is creating some interaction between the learner and the AI to try to help them help the learners work through some problems. And with Idea Lab, we are creating different public goods, such as their annotated data set. We are open sourcing their chatbot, their item generation. We are open sourcing the harness, the AI model that, well, the AI more like prompting that was able to annotate all their data set. So other companies can annotate any interactions through this researcher's rubric. And finally, if we can go to the next slide. Another example is an example that Learning Data Insights is doing, where they are trying to create a framework for validity based on all the public research that has been done in the last 3 years on AI scoring. And this way of trying to create this framework is a base that can help us to start thinking and considering what is the next construct for validity in psychometrics. We found very little papers actually on reliability and measurement, statistical measurement of fairness. So this is also an indicator that much work needs to be done for us to have like a psychometrics for these types of measurements. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. I am Alina von Davier. Next slide, please. And I will talk about computational psychometrics today. And it's definitely as one way in which we can think about measurement in the AI era. Next slide, please. So who am I? I am Chief of Assessment with Duolingo, where I lead the Duolingo English test. And I have worked with AI for a very long time in different versions, starting at ETS, where I was working when I introduced the concept of computational psychometrics, but then moving all along, working on computational psychometrics as a framework, and we published a book about that with late Bob Mislevy and with my colleague from ETS, Jiangang Hao. I also, at Duolingo, for the Duolingo English test, we adopted technologies, automations, and then, of course, AI. From the beginning, I joined in 2020, and we launched the first interactive task for reading in 2022 in April, which is about 8 months before ChatGPT was actually launched. So definitely we are one of those groups that embraced these technologies and work really hard to make them as thoughtful and as careful and valid as we can think of. And we also published about these activities so that we can share our lessons learned and activities with others. I also worked with Macat, which is a company from the UK, on their critical thinking test, especially since it aligns with some of the presentations that my colleagues gave before. There are 2 books coming out this year, probably towards the end of the year. One of them is here on the screen, is about is the Routledge Handbook of Digital Language Assessment, Innovations and Insights from the Duolingo English Test. The reason this is worth a book is because a lot of the things that we did just did not exist before. So we had to do a lot of inventions and innovations in order to make that happen. And the other book is another edited volume that Duan Lian and I are editing. It's Artificial Intelligence in Educational Learning and Assessment, and both of them are expected to come out this year. Next slide, please. So what is computational psychometrics? I introduced it in 2015 at ICML, International Conference of Machine Learning. It's an integrative framework for AI-based capabilities. Computational psychometrics is a blend of theory-driven psychometrics with machine learning methods and together they are used to measure latent abilities, ideally in real time. And the way it works is that we look at very rich data, telemetry in general, but it can be multimodal as well at a very fine level. Use machine learning AI tools to extract the right features and then use those features to build and project the higher level constructs. And only after that, we get to the cognitive learning and psychometric models that with which we are used to in our educational measurement context. Next slide. So one of the discoveries, if you want, at that point in time was that actually content is data. And once you think in this way, a lot of doors open because we can treat taxonomies, standards, knowledge maps, all of this is actually data. And if we work within an NLP framework, we can develop items, we can tag items, we can classify those items, we can build Q matrices for cognitive diagnostic modeling. So if we combine the item and instructional content metadata, then we can align testing instruments and instructional tools through these taxonomies. And of course, all of this is a prerequisite, if you want, for automatic item generation with AI. Next, please. So I tried to put it all together, and I know it's quite a lot on this slide. The idea I wanted to illustrate here is that it depends. The theory is up there. We have the extended evidence-centered design, and on the green boxes below are actually all different types of data. They can be the log files, they can be the content data, they can be the observational data from camera, sensor, they can also be ancillary data. And then the purple, the lowest one is actually the performance. Do they solve a problem correctly or not? So what is in between is pretty much this computational psychometrics. That's where it comes into place, because you need a good way to make sense of these different types of data that are multimodal, that require a different way of storing them, a different way of managing them. They are not only just very big data, but they are of different types that we've been used to. And also they contain often dependencies that were not considered in the traditional psychometric model. For those of you who are familiar with IRT, you know that one of the assumptions there is that we have what is called a local independence. Well, obviously, if we talk about complex learning environments, that local independence does not hold. Similarly, if you have a collaborative assessment where people work with each other, then the super standard assumptions of that the data need to be IID, independently identically distributed, would not hold either. So therefore, once we go up into this computational psychometric framework, we need to include models that can deal with this type of data, with dependent data and with longitudinal data. So that's more about a picture on how computational psychometric is about the data, but obviously it's more than that because it brings the rigor and the theory of psychometrics. Next, please. And that's round one, I guess.
Yeah, so now we'll transition to the first question, and Alina will be coming to you, back to you in just a moment. That all sounds very promising and exciting. And what does safe and effective by design look like? So we've asked each panelist to prepare some reflections on, and Alina will be the only one with the slides, but how do we manage the peril of multimodal AI, including privacy, fairness, safety, efficacy? And the sequence here for this first round of questions will go Alina, Nancy, Kristen, Andreas. Alina?
Sure. So I can share more about how we at the Duolingo English Test implemented different frameworks and different technologies again, but also processes to make sure that what we do actually makes sense and we do testing for good and not testing for, I don't know, commercial reasons. So one thing that we put in place from relatively early, when we realized that we were at that time the only assessment that used AI end-to-end, in 2022 was that we put together the first responsible AI standards in an assessment program. And we felt responsible at that point. We said, we are the first one doing it. Let's put our thinking out there. collect input, and eventually revise these standards. So one area where, and this slides here illustrates more our understanding now, because of course there were a lot of good lessons learned over the years. So we think about custodianship of AI use. And in that framework, we have the humans being in that particular role of custodians, and we have the human governance, human in the loop practices, but we also have very clearly defined the traditional psychometrics and good assessment science practices that Kristen actually has been talking about. Construct definition. What exactly are we going to measure? What are the guardrails for item generation? How do we deliver, and how do we score and monitor both validity and fairness? So we look, for example, for fairness into algorithmic bias, for privacy and security. We make sure that the data governance is up to date, not only human-wise and theory-wise, but also technology-wise. We want to make sure that we are prepared for any type of potential attack and cyber attack. Accountability. We want to be very clear about who does what and what are the roles, and to increase the awareness. Next, please. And then, so that's one area that, if you want, oversees how we think about it. But then specifically, we develop a tool called Aqua, Analytics for Quality Assurance in Assessment, which is a research-based automatic monitoring system. We also wrote a paper, or more than one, about this. And the way it works is that it imports the data from our database almost in real time, calculate various statistics and metrics that we also improved over time. And then we have dashboards associated with it so that we can visualize many of the behaviors of our metrics. So we also have a set of intermediate data files that we use for many of these plots and dashboards. Now, if any of these metrics will go outside of an interval that we established beforehand, then we will get a Slack message, all of us, and then we will get together and evaluate whether this is just a fluke or if there is anything serious behind that. So this is one example of quality assurance that we put in place to help us maintain the quality of the assessment when we have so much automation and AI. Next, please. If there is any other. So again, I think both Kristen and Andreas before, that's also my message. To be or not to be a good test does not depend on AI. It depends on expert governance, on due diligence for all aspects of the assessment. We need to be careful and responsible. We need to make sure that the items are of quality, that the content is well represented, everything is accurate, valid, fair in terms of scoring, and we need to monitor that. Quality control and system resilience, I believe, matter more than ever, and they are very concrete tools that anyone actually can build and use in order to make sure that the way we implement AI actually supports a good practice of testing. Next, or probably that's the last one.
Yeah. Thank you. If we could come off slides for now. So Nancy, how are you thinking about safeguarding quality from the perspective of public goods?
Several things comes to mind. One of them is that we need to find ways to collect data from diverse populations. We need to find ways to collect data from diverse contexts. We need to find ways to create those benchmarks. So when we are creating the data, we can actually ask frontier labs and other lab developers to see if they can get tested on these benchmarks. But to make this then to move to product, I think one of the things that is needed is also to, when we're creating public goods, to see how they actually be useful for all the products that are here, right? For like people like Duolingo, like ETS, like many other companies, and there is still not infrastructure to help them provide this transition from public goods to product development. So we need to create that. Another problem for multimodal AI is that it has a lot of latency issues. Right now, basically, it's more like a Frankenstein than a model that is just fusion with all of these different things. So there's still some development that needs to happen in that front. And one of the problems there is that it's also going to be probably more expensive and more heavy. One is like a fusion model than many different Frankensteins. So I think the access of these models is also going to be something that keeps being important for making sure that everyone can use them. Yeah, these are some of the ideas.
Kristen, how do we manage the peril?
Uh, we manage the peril by refusing to treat these new technologies, multimodal AI, and whatever is next in 6 months, as a reason to shortcut sound practice in building. Again, putting on my K-12 hat of building tools that are to be used in real classrooms. So, as we are engaging in this research, in this development to try to make learning and instruction and assessment and the entire endeavor more authentic, more valuable, our first question should always be, what educational or learning process or decision will this tool support? And then, working backwards from that. This also leads to, the right questions around, construct relevance. If we have these tools that are able to capture multimodal data, does it, is there a fit with the construct that we're trying to measure? And is that a fit with the educational process or decision we're trying to support? Again, this is all very ECD pad sounding. I like to use voice recognition as an example. One of the reasons that a few years ago, Curriculum Associates partnered with acquired Soapbox Labs voice recognition technology is because they approached building that technology from such a principled way. They had a very specific use case in mind of being able to capture children's voices, not just speech recognition in this pristine environment of one person with one microphone, and the technology being able to capture the gist or generally what the person said, but children's voices in noisy classrooms where it was critical to be able to capture errors in speaking at the phenome level, and be able to do so to Nancy's point, with children with a variety of dialects and a variety of accents, so that the inferences we are making about students and their early literacy and oral fluency are valid and supported. And we do this from working as early and often as we can, shoulder to shoulder with educators and students in real classrooms, as we are seeing with our own eyes what's happening in the classroom, talking to teachers and students about what they need and how these tools can be more useful rather than just something else they have to deal with. And then of course there is always the adherence to district level and state level student privacy concerns, which these guidelines are deeply influenced by family needs and family demands about student data privacy. And so the burden is on us to show that collecting all of these data can produce a return on investment that is worthwhile to the teachers, to the students, and ultimately to the families of these children. So I think the short answer is Ask good questions at the beginning of the design, and make sure that you're doing something that the people you're trying to serve will actually value.
Andreas?
Yeah, so I'm not going to stray too far from Kristen because I couldn't agree more about that. In my view, the multimodal is not a peril, it's an opportunity to get better data, stronger data, etc. But we have to do two things kind of right, especially as a lot of the kind of classic feature extraction that was being done in NLP, kind of machine learning based things, is really shifting to just LLMs and transformer based extraction. And so the two things we need to do very well is we need to have a very strong AI evaluations framework. At RTI, we're using a British model, in fact, Asterisk, which is a great model to kind of walk through all the evaluations and make sure you do no harm. And the other thing, of course, is making sure that we keep our privacy. So there's various privacy preserving mechanisms that can be used and that we publish on quite a bit, but also, models like FedRAMP, FIPS Modern Law, HIPAA even are great models to govern that, and we should adopt those. In the end, and I think Alina put it really nicely in the computational psychometric slide with the mountain. I think the much bigger threat and peril that I think is also aligned with what Kristen and Nancy were saying is that take something like problem solving, which is such a massive construct that everybody can make anything up of about at any time. We're trying to make some kind of statement about the top of Mount Everest, but we're measuring down in Kathmandu here. And I would rather us starting to make some inferences about base camp, maybe, or maybe first camp, and not make these inferences somewhere up on the top where everybody can basically make up anything about what it means. And so that's to me the real peril.
So, given where we are in the hour, and I appreciate the pace and the texture and the richness of the responses, we'll have a kind of combination of the second round of questions here, which were focused on what matters most for the pathway forward. We'll combine that with your closing argument, which was, kind of 60-minute closing argument. You'll each have about 2 minutes, and we'll start with Nancy, go to Andreas, Kristen, and then Alina. So, Nancy, 2 minutes of closing reflections around the pathway forward and what matters most.
So great conversation here has been already said, but I think I'm just gonna agree with that. Yes, we cannot lead this technology to decide what we're gonna do, but we need to first decide what we want to do and see what problem it can solve for us. I think we have already great practitioners, we have already great researchers, we have already great products that can start using this technology for less efficiency, as some people have mentioned, and more transformative pathways. So I think that is my hope for AI, that is my hope for multimodal. My hope is also that we can come together as a field and learn from the other fields, as Andreas has suggested, and maybe create more of new ways to think about it that can help us use AI in many different ways from the beginning, instead of start patching and having Frankensteins everywhere. So I think we can come together and do some norm setting. That would be great for the field in general. And I think that's maybe my 2 minutes, but yeah.
Perfect. And I'm gonna very much agree with that, and I'm gonna get on my soapbox on how we do that. And I believe that data enclaves is the way to go here, to bring basically to go from bringing data to researchers, bringing researchers to the data, and to workbenches in secure environments so that we can accelerate the substantive research that benefits learners and teachers, as opposed to the more esoteric, model this parameter a little bit different or that. It's sort of irrelevant if we don't do this right. And so we need to build smart enclaves, secure enclaves that we can drive researchers to, that use AI to help interrogate the data, and that doesn't require that much technical chops in order to make real substantive progress on what we know about learning and teaching.
Yeah, and just building on what both Nancy and Andreas said, except I don't have like this great metaphor. I think Andreas may have a hiking trip in the Himalayas coming up. But my closing argument is that, you know, this era of AI, and Alina, I'm just thinking back on how long you've been working in this, but it feels emergent and different right now than ever before, but maybe not to you as a veteran in this area. But as AI, these new models give us, you know, both an extraordinary opportunity and a very serious responsibility, right? And balancing that is paramount. The opportunity, as we've said, is to measure in much more authentic ways, and we need to do that in a very principled way, as I said before. And then, of course, the responsibility is making sure that we are doing so in a way that is very much grounded in real classrooms. And Andreas, maybe that's what you meant by bringing researchers to the data. If I think about that enclave in the context of elementary school learning. Yes, we need to do that. We need to understand real classrooms and what authentic learning looks like. And if we begin with a clear learning model, well-designed learning progressions, PLDs, explicit rules about what constitutes observable evidence of student learning, and research in real classrooms, and true partnership with teachers and students, I believe that we are really going to have a lot of very high return on investment, because from a K-12 perspective, the goal is to give educators better evidence sooner, and all in the service of more authentic and deeper learning for students.
So I think I'm going to take a different view. I agree with everything that was said, but I thought I should try a different perspective for the conversation's sake here. There are two areas where I like to think about. One is what is going to stay the same, and the other one, well, what is going to be different. What is going to stay the same, I think we all agree, and everyone before me mentioned about all these good things that we should have for education in general and assessment in particular. Now, what is different is changing extremely fast as well. So that's another challenge that we have. It's not enough that it's different. It's also different every day in many ways. One area in which I believe we need to pay attention, and we have not discussed it yet, partly because it changes so much, is the changing role of the AI in, say, in assessment. I've been talking recently about co-regulation. What we've been doing at the Duolingo English test, but I see that happening in other domains as well, is that we actually replace the type of management, the type of role assignment, if you want, for different tasks from multiple types of humans and human experts to, say, similarly a set of human experts, but now it also includes AI agents, for example, or AI co-scientists that can be part of this discussion. So what does that mean for us? In the past, we looked at validity as being the process, but also the outcome, the construct, and the consequences. But we never really look at validity as part of how a company is managed, for example. Whether an incredible company like, say, ETS or College Board, or those that have been around for a long time, or whether those companies themselves had processes that made them valid. Well, now things may change because if we have, and why I'm saying that, because we knew that these companies build trust. These companies had good management tools in place, that if there were actors, agents, humans that did not behave in a proper ethical way, they would be fired. And we trusted those institutions that, and they build that trust over the years through their actions, through their support for the right causes, to their position on the issues, various issues in the national or international conversations. But now that we move to agents, for example, what does that mean? We need to include the management of agents somehow into this validity conversation. And yes, maybe we are not fully there yet, though I believe, I propose a way to use agents for generating content. So we have agents and humans, as I mentioned before, working together in this co-regulated system. But how are we going to talk about validity going forward? Do we need to have procedure in place to identify and fire agents that do not have an ethical behavior? We don't know. So there are still a lot of interesting questions that we all probably need to explore. Thank you.
We have just a minute or two here, so I would just ask the panelists whether wearing my youth soccer coach hat, a question I tee up to players, who do you want to recognize? Who do you want to appreciate? What insights did you hear from your colleague that you may want to spotlight as important today?
I'll start. I would like to give a shout out to Nancy and the work that Gates Foundation is supporting to make various assets available. And as someone coming from private industry, I think that we should. Those of us working in private industry, we should think about how to do more in terms of making sure that our learnings are out there for the public good. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to Gates and Nancy for that.
Thank you. Who do you want to recognize? Who do you want to appreciate?
I'll go next. I want to recognize and appreciate Alina's work and Duolingo's work on innovation. I mean, it's amazing how much innovation can happen, and you'd think that wouldn't come from a commercial company that has shareholders and needs to pay dividends, and the fact that that's where it all happens is pretty amazing. And so, great shout out to all that work and for their commitment to sharing it with the world.
Thank you.
I can go next. Yeah, so I think I got three different ones. I think I really like Andrea's push to see at what other industries are doing. I think, one of the silver linings that we're going slow is that we can learn from others in a way, in a place where everything's a little bit messy. So I think that's a great push. I love the Kristen push for let's just keep focusing on what do we want to measure. Let's not let the technology just take us to different places. And I love Duolingo perspective on we need to go now beyond just the validity of specific things, believing that we were able to contain the context and the learning, but now everything is percolating into other systems. So thinking about the systems as a whole thing might be now important. Thank you for inviting me to this. I learned a lot.
Yeah, and I also appreciate everyone's perspective. It's really it's really good that we have these conversations because we all see different slices of the universe. And I think coming together and trying to understand each other's experiences, each other challenges and solutions where we can share those is extremely valuable. So kudos to Kristen and Andreas and Nancy for sharing their work, because each of us have a very different different vantage point in how AI impacts our education. And thank you to Eric and Cheryl for organizing this. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So thank you each for spending this hour with us and for being a part of this growing community of educators and researchers and builders committed to reimagining assessment, to upgrade how we understand and design for quality and particularly usefulness and usability of assessment as we embrace multimodal assessment and innovate how we measure. Today's discussion sparked issues that will carry forward in our own practice, and we hope you'll stay in touch. Thank you for the honor of spending time with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.